Got to put the glasses on. Thank you, Janice. Thank you so much to the Chamber. We're honored, Accenture's honored to be here today at the first annual WELL Conference. I've spent most of my career at Accenture, more than 20 years, which means I started when I was 5. So we're not going to talk about age today. We're a company, for those of you that don't know, of about 450,000 people, but one of the things I'm most proud of that we are committed to is inclusion and diversity. When companies bring together all different people, it's just really a recipe for success in creativity, in innovation, and really for agility. Our topic for our panel today is around advocacy for all. And in other words, we should really advocate for one another and work together, as we've heard this morning from Mina and from the first panel, for change. I think personally this is not a more urgent time for this topic. Accenture does research on inclusion and diversity. One of the pieces that I'm super excited about is our Getting to Equal research. As part of this research, it sampled 2,900 professionals under the age of 30 who have been in the workforce for about 5 years. And the survey, not surprising, showed that young women professionals face immediate challenges tied to pay and promotion. And there's a huge gap in terms of mentorship, helping them build their own networks, professional training, and this just exacerbates the issues at this level. But the study has good news. It's not all grim. It shows that in companies that have cultures where equality is at the center of the sun, it really can help young women and men thrive. And the results are astounding. Advancements is widespread, retention is high, and obviously our people satisfaction is great. So, our panel is here to talk to us today about advocacy. I'm going to call them up onto the stage in a minute, but I do want to leave you with something because I've been so inspired from what I've heard this morning. That's one of my absolute most favorite quotes from Nikita Gill, and it's never ever mistake her silence for weakness, because always remember that sometimes the air always stills before a hurricane is on set. So remember, we can all be our own hurricane. I'd love to call my panel up to the stage. Claire Farley, Orlando White, and Carmen Chu. Come up and join me. So we're going to do just a quick introduction, because you will do it better than I, of ourselves. So do you want to start, sure. Orlando?
Hello, everyone. I was on the phone with my mother this morning, and I told her I'd be speaking here. She said, do me proud. So my intention to being on this panel is to do my mom proud. My name is Orlando White. I am a community affairs manager at LinkedIn, and my job is to ensure that LinkedIn is really the gold standard in any community in which we're operating. And that we are partnering locally and investing in community organizations. Personally, I would say I'm an advocate for women. I'm an advocate for communities of color. I'm an advocate for the LGBT plus community, and it is truly my honor to be here.
Awesome. Claire.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Farley, and I am Senior Advisor to the Mayor and Director of the Office of Transgender Initiatives. You know, I feel so honored to work for such a wonderful city that, you know, is committed to diversity and inclusion, and has really pioneered efforts to be a model city to support trans and LGBT folks. And, you know, I am the only out trans department head across the city, and, you know, that's been a really wonderful honor. And then getting to work for London Breed, our first African-American female mayor, which is incredible, and, you know, really getting to support her as well as the city to make sure that all of our programs and services and policies are really inclusive to LGBT communities. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Carmen.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Carmen Chu. I serve as San Francisco's elected assessor. In the state of California, I am the only Asian American assessor who is elected across our 58 counties. Thank you.
That's awesome.
I sit and have a number of different roles. One of them is that I sit on San Francisco's pension board as well and manage the $24 billion trust that many of our employees are looking for. to make sure that their retirements are secure and safe. I also am an executive of my organization. We have about 200 employees who work for me in 3 different locations across the city, and so it's also important to make sure that we're leading that organization in an effective way. And the last thing I will say is, for folks who don't know me, I grew up in an immigrant family. My parents came here about 40 plus years ago, and when they came, they had no money. They didn't know how to speak English very well, and my mom started off sewing clothes. My dad worked in kitchens, and I actually helped out when my parents saved up enough money to open a small restaurant, and there I was every single weekend helping out. And so these values of working hard, of the importance of inclusion, of opportunity, are things that I bring with me in my public service.
That's great. So I know you're all personally passionate. Maybe just tell a little bit about why you are. And each of you have amazing stories, which probably that no one would know here. So can you tell us a little bit why, like how you got into this, why you're personally passionate?
For me, it started when I was in college. Up until that point, grew up in a 2-parent household in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and really had every opportunity afforded to me. And when I was a student at Howard University, I remember sitting on a bench with one of my good friends, and we were sitting down just having a conversation, and a park police officer drove by us. And I thought in my head, I had never had an interaction with a police officer before, not even a speeding ticket. And so I thought to myself, how interesting would it be if he came out of his car and came over to us? And lo and behold, he did. And he came over and he said, I smell marijuana. And I said, sir, there is no marijuana, I don't smoke. Yeah. And he said, no, I'm sure I smell it. And he called back up, and he said, stand up. And I stood up, and he put me in handcuffs. That was the first time I'd ever been in handcuffs. At the time, I was a sophomore. I was interning at the Brookings Institution. And I was sitting there on this bench in handcuffs for 45 minutes as he searched this park for marijuana that I didn't have.
So he searched beyond you, just like the park.
He
He's
searched
searching
me.
the park.
He searched me, and then he searched the park that we were in because he thought I had thrown it somewhere. And as I was sitting there in handcuffs, I think what was even more painful than the feeling of having your arms behind your back is I looked up at him, and I could see that he didn't fully see me. I could see that he didn't fully understand the fullness of who I am and the fullness of my humanity. He didn't see any of that. He saw who he thought I was. Mm-hmm. And me being in those handcuffs in that moment, that is who I became to him. Mm-hmm. And for me, diversity is about bringing forth what makes us unique and validating our experiences. So when I looked at him in his eyes and I told him I don't have any marijuana, and he told me, I don't believe you, I look at Dr. Ford and her bravery, and for someone to say after she opens herself in that way, I don't believe you, hits very close to home for me. So that's why I believe in diversity.
That's amazing. So Claire, building on that, a little bit of what we just heard from Orlando, people think they know. And so tell us a little bit about your story, because I think your journey's been amazing, and you've been very brave too in the process.
Thank you.
With people that really just sort of don't get it. Right?
Yeah, well, I think, obviously being a trans woman, Carmen knows, predominantly in government, there's a lot of cis white men that we work with.
It's that way in consulting too.
Yes.
And in tech.
No offense to my colleagues. Just saying.
But I think part of it for me growing up, I had a lot of access to privilege, and I went to Sarah Lawrence in New York, and when I was trying to get a summer job in Manhattan, I realized that I couldn't even get a job as a busser or working for J. Crew. And I wondered why, and I realized that so much of it was based on their perception of me and whether or not I was passing or if I was woman enough for those particular spaces. And through those kind of pitfalls, I realized that there really wasn't a lot of advocacy around economic justice and economic development for the LGBT community. And so when I moved to San Francisco, I started the first trans employment program in the country to help help address the poverty that often comes with the community, and looked at, how can I start changing the narrative that, just like all communities, that trans people are so many things. We're engineers, we're data scientists, we're managers, we're senior advisors, and how can we also then look at advocacy around the intersections of diversity that often come with our histories. And so recognizing that both we need to shift the narrative, but that we're stronger together in the more work we do, whether we're working against racism or ableism or poverty or homelessness. All of these issues impact every single one of us. And so I think that's what's really kept me inspired and kept me resilient through the challenges.
That's amazing.
And I spoke a little bit about my parents and the immigrant experience, and I think that that's been something that's been formative in my life. I saw my parents struggle when my parents and our family had to go seek medical services. They had me as a 10-year-old trying to interpret and translate information to doctors. So I think these experiences that you have about what it is like to sort of struggle and to try to find your way here, it sticks with you. The reason that I got into public policy, I don't think that I ever really knew. My mom, she swears that when I was a kid, I was dancing around pretending I was going to be a ballerina or something like that for my career. I fell off the table, so she definitely knew that I wasn't going to become any of that, graceful kind of dancing business. But the reason that I got into public policy was actually an experience that happened in our family's life. And so my parents, I grew up in Southern California, and my parents had a restaurant in Inglewood, California. And I can remember a very clear event in history, the Rodney King riots, the Los Angeles riots down in Southern California. That first day of the riots, my parents were held up at gunpoint and their car was stolen. And I was waiting for my parents to come home all night. My parents always came home very late anyway, but it was especially late that night, and we were just really worried and didn't know what happened to them. There were no cell phones at that time. And so we were really lucky because they ended up finding their way back home. But it was one of these experiences that really opened up my eyes. My parents, they had a restaurant there, and we were constantly worried for every single day about whether it would be burned down, if something was going to happen to our family business, and that was really our only livelihood. And so smelling the ash and having a lot of conversations afterwards, it was something that really impacted me. And I remember thinking at that point about what role it was that government played in creating opportunities and making sure that we're leveling the playing field and that we actually create an inclusive community. And I think that really stuck with me because, I know that there's a lot of cynicism around government. There's a lot of questions about what we can and cannot do and whether we're effective. But I truly believe that we are here to try to make something better, to make our communities better. And if I can play a role in it, then I'm happy to do it. And so that was really my pathway down the way to public policy and government.
That's amazing. So Orlando, you work for LinkedIn, which is super cool. You're all agents of change. So, within LinkedIn, I know you've kind of created this path and awareness there. And from a company perspective, they're incredibly supportive. So what's been your journey there to sort of integrate your agent of change and some of the passion that you're bringing here to get, there's a lot of big companies in the room today, Accenture included. How do you get that sort of groundswell that you've done at LinkedIn?
Well, LinkedIn's vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That is our mission, our vision statement. And what we really try and hone in on, what we have to hone in on is every, and expanding what every means. Every being a veteran, every being someone who was formerly incarcerated, every being someone who is a woman returning to the workforce after being a mother for 18 years, right? That is the every. And so LinkedIn isn't successful unless we figure out how to bring that every to our company. And that is from top down, bottom up, and across the company. We hold that true. This is a really incredible quote that a colleague of mine shared, which is like, if you are here to help me, then you're wasting your time. But if you believe your liberation is bounded with mine, then let's work together. And I think that is how LinkedIn is framing this conversation around diversity. It is not a nice to do. It is a must do. It is imperative to us being successful as a business. And I think large enterprises, large large corporations, when they can start to shift diversity from being something that is nice to something that is a must, I think that's when the needle starts to move.
Do you think, just a follow-on question
Yeah.
from that too, I think we've seen that in a lot of, I'd say Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies now. I think it used to be like, oh, we've got, the inclusion and diversity lead, and they're sort of over here, and now they're, they're part of our boards. And are you seeing this shift? Are you seeing it's room to grow, I guess? I think you still think there's room to grow. I think LinkedIn's
definitely.
been at the forefront of it. I know they have a challenge. It's super cool if you haven't, seen it, look at it. And I think there's a lot of challenges that are happening organically in the Valley right now.
There's a really great program, to your point, that was created to ensure that middle management, who is, women, people of color, are able to move up into leadership roles. And that doesn't sit within diversity. It actually started in our global sales organization and was funded by our senior vice president of sales. And he said, we need to create a program where people can get a sponsor, right, and have someone who is advocating for them in the company when they're not there. We're going to give them a coach and help them understand how to build their executive presence. And then finally, we want to give them a mentor, someone who they can meet with and talk to and ask difficult questions to. So, LinkedIn is, we are doing really impactful work, but there's a lot of room for us to grow.
I think you're a gold star though. I mean,
Thank
seriously.
you.
So let's talk a little bit, Carmen, about your W challenge.
Oh, thank you. So
And explain what it is.
Sure.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
Sure. So, one of the things that we have really been thinking about is how it is that we're going to be engaging women and uplifting the voices of women, something that I care very much about. In my own organization as the assessor, with the 200 employees that I have, it's important for me to set an example as well. And so I do a lot of work to try to encourage and mentor all of the people who work for me, to provide resources for our senior executives, to make sure that they are being coached, that they're learning how that they can rise as well. I'm always asking them what their future goals are outside of our organization and trying to make sure that we uplift them as well. But the W challenge is something that I thought was incredibly necessary. Women won the right to vote about almost 100 years ago, about 98 years ago or so, and we are still woefully underrepresented when it comes to representation in government. I think in San Francisco we're doing a fine job in terms of our representation at the mayor, the board of supervisors, but when you look at the state level and when you take a look at our federal representation, we're I think roughly about 20% of representation compared to our population, so significantly low. I think we spoke a little bit about not being represented in executive level positions in corporations or in corporate boards, and so there's a lot more that we have to do. And one of the ways that I want to start exercising and encouraging women to vote or a way to encourage women to lift their voices is through the ballot box. In the state of California, I'm not sure if people know this, but we're actually the third worst state when it comes to women's voter registration. And this is something that's surprising to me. For all of the activism, for all of the work that we've been doing, California is the third worst state. And so I think when people see problems like this and say, well, why is it that women aren't registering to vote? There are many, many reasons, many, many barriers to it. And we think that that problem is too large. But if we all actually do our own part to help change that, it's actually quite powerful. And so the W challenge is really simple. All it is number one, you pledge to vote yourself and to go to the ballot box. I know we're busy, but it really doesn't take that much time to go vote. And you can vote absentee if you want to. So number one, you pledge to vote. And the second thing, which can be really, really a wave if we do it right, is that you just get one more person to register. That's all. Talk to a friend, talk to the person who's working next to you, talk to your grandmother. They might not be registered and you might just not know it. Have that conversation and say, are you registered to vote? Are you exercising your power? And just get them to vote. So you just imagine if all of us in the room, we have like 200 people who are here, if each one of us just did that one thing, that simple conversation to one person, we can double that. We can have 200 more people who are going to be voting this year. And so that's what the W Challenge is, and I hope that you'll all participate in it.
How do we find out about it?
So you can go to wchallenge.org.
We'll get it
It's
out to everyone.
super
Yeah.
easy. But the one thing I will say also is that we have one of these cards in your bags, and so every single person has this. Our goal is to get to 500 individuals to pledge. We're actually over 300, so if every person in this room did it, we meet our goal today. So all you have to do is pull out this card. It tells you about the W Challenge, and you just pledge to vote. So I hope that you'll do that today.
It's awesome. And we know it's important, but it reminds me of Nina sitting on the floor, What are 3 things that people can do, to get involved, to help raise awareness, to, help encourage and be part of what you're doing and some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Orlando mentioned that, I think diversity and inclusion needs to be more than just the number. Like, we need to start first with thinking about what is the culture of our workplace, and how are we working to make sure that once we bring in trans folks, LGBT folks, people of color, that there's actually safety and inclusion within our workplace. And I think that leads to the second thing is which I think the panel before us spoke to so well, is how do we champion each other? I think oftentimes we are working, obviously in really crazy, fast-paced world to try to just make it through, but how can we, lift someone up? So if you leave a position, help support another woman or another leader join that position when you leave. Do something to help, really help people ladder up, because, I think sometimes we really don't recognize that we have to actually, if we're going to talk about diversity, we have to actually do something. And so, hiring trans people, hiring, LGBT folks is really important. And then I think the third piece is, really look at the own work that you need to do. I mean, I think we often look at, okay, what is the company policy? Do we have all these things in place? And then once these policies are in place, then we'll work on inclusion. But I think individually, and it's great to hear people have access to coaches and different mentors, work on the own biases that you have within yourself, I know that when I was transitioning from nonprofit management to city leadership, I really started doing some of my own work with a coach around racial equity, and that's work that I will continue to do throughout my career and throughout my life. And so I think each of us need to do that work in order to shift the culture of the workplaces. And we might see that, I worked with LinkedIn a lot doing LGBT hiring events, and folks that I've talked to, speak about LinkedIn's strong hiring policies, but we also have to think about the frontline staff that serve the coffee bars and that serve the restaurants within the tech companies. How are we helping leverage up people into leadership or into new roles within our organizations at every single level? And so I think we get a little bit complacent in our own success, which I think is important, but we also have to make sure that we're supporting our community, and making sure that San Francisco retains the living culture of being diverse and celebrating our communities.
Claire reminds me actually of this really cool quote that I heard, which is, diversity is getting an invite to the party, right? And inclusion is someone asking you to dance at the party. And then belonging, taking it even one step further, is someone playing music that you like to listen to, right? So that you can dance and actually enjoy the party, right?
Yeah.
And that is what you said, reminds me of that, is that it's great to kind of make the call to action to bring folks in. But once they're in, what are you going to do to ensure that they stay? And then not only that, what are you going to do to ensure that they move up, right? And so I think it's this, all-encompassing thing where we try and become more diverse and also do our own personal work and organizational work to ensure that folks feel comfortable.
So in our last minute, I'm going to have each of you do, parting thoughts. So, so we've got a great room of people that are willing to dive in. So what can somebody, one or two things, if you leave here and you remember nothing else, this, I would ask each of you.
I would say, you know, if you're lucky, you're born at a time when the world is ready for the change that you're bringing. And if that happens, the only thing you need to do is step into yourself and do your work. And so I would say the same thing to you that I tell myself, which is be authentic, tell your story, know that what you've experienced, who you are, matters, even if you don't think it matters, and inspires someone. And there's this incredible ripple effect that happens when we show the trueness of ourselves. And that ripple effect is that others can see their experience in us. And, you know, praying, you know, whatever happens today with the vote, Dr. Ford did something incredible, which is create this ripple effect where people are saying, I see myself in that experience, and we're going to make this change, right? So I would say be yourself, be authentic, be bold, and tell your story.
Awesome. Claire?
Yeah, I think I ditto just be unapologetically you. You know, I think oftentimes you won't see yourself reflected in the rooms that you're in, but that's okay. We need to start somewhere and make space and create change from the inside. And then I think for the allies in the room, you know, I would encourage you to not be complacent with what an ally is. Like, you know, it's a process of allying. You know, like every day you get to choose, am I being an ally in this moment? Other times we'll make mistakes, and that's okay. And so allow yourself to move past the mistake and, you know, take another step forward. And then the last thing is I launched a Hire Trans campaign across Barton Muni, and so I would encourage anyone that's a hiring manager or works with a team is to hire trans people. We can't be a part of your organizations if you don't hire us and bring us within your organization. So thank you.
Well, obviously, don't forget to register and to vote. You know, I have two wonderful women who are here, part of my team, Vivian Poe and Isabella Gordillo. Vivian is actually pregnant, so don't make her work too hard to get your cards, okay? But I think the other thing that I would just ask, aside from just, you know, don't give up on the political system, be active, engage, don't disengage from it. But, you know, one thing that I've spoken a lot about because I've seen this is that, you know, our country overall, and even here in San Francisco, it's not just nationally, we see this here too, we sometimes get so polarized in where we are on positions. You're either 100% with me, and if you're not, you're the enemy, right? And I don't know that that's necessarily the most helpful way to be trying to create policy and trying to move things forward. And so when we've been talking about this idea about how do you create inclusion, real inclusion, how do you actually create an atmosphere and environment where people's diversity is actually celebrated, that means that we all have to reevaluate ourselves, our own biases, and say, can I put myself in that other person's shoe for just a moment? If I had a real honest conversation with you and was willing to listen to what you had to say, even though I really don't believe it or I don't agree with you, is there some nugget of truth that I can pull from it that we can build some kind of common understanding about where we're going to try to break through some of that? So I would just say that I really hope that we can all do that. If we did that in our individual lives, we might actually move forward a little bit more rather than kind of just pulling ourselves and fighting each other when we may actually have very common and similar goals that we want to achieve.
Awesome. Thank you all very much.